This Thursday, 1 p.m. on Politically Conscious episode 50, the government's back open, but at what cost? Did Democrats cave for political optics, or was it part of a bigger plan to keep voters hooked? Our experts break down who really won, who lost, and whether they agree with Charlamagne Tha God of the Breakfast Club, who says Democrats played the American people. Don't miss this explosive episode. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us live on YouTube and Facebook. What's up, y'all? Representing episode 51 of Politically Conscious. I got my man Emil Bryan and Leo Smith back-to-back weeks for us. Thanks for the overtime, brother. As we bring it, the political consciousness from the left and the right. My brother Leo represents from the right, Emil operates from the left. I'm an independent, and we basically just try to give you all three perspectives on what's happening in politics by sharing various clips around the internet on politics and give you our perspective. Emil, I'll let you introduce yourself. Keep it quick. Leo, keep it quick because I gotta get right to these cuts because I'm gonna push a bunch of them in, and we have a special guest coming on later today as well. So just a shorter version than normal, Emil.
Emil Bryan, political consultant, author. I tell my candidates when I work with them, tell the truth, tell it early, tell it often. Bad news never gets better with time. The people can handle it. If you must tell something, tell the truth.
There it is, Leo.
Leo Smith, former RNC and Georgia GOP strategist. Currently what I call a pro-democracy strategy, still conservative, just pro-liberty and freedom.
Hey, love it. Let's go ahead and get to these clips and tell everybody what's actually happening because they've heard so much propaganda. And our motto is, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. So I got a brother by the name of attorney. Let's see what's his name here.
The government is not reopened. But what you need to know is what happened yesterday. Late Sunday, the Senate voted 60-40 in favor of moving forward on a funding package that would reopen the government. Here are the key facts you need to know. The vote was not the final approval of a funding bill. It was a procedural vote, a motion to proceed or cloture, meaning the Senate agreed to begin debate and amendments on legislation. The package would provide funding to keep the government running until January the 30th, 2026, and includes 3 full-year appropriation bills on key agencies. It contains provisions that will reverse and halt federal worker layoffs during the shutdown and guarantee back pay to those furloughed. Most importantly, the deal does not include any immediate extension of health care insurance tax credit under the Affordable Care Act, a major point of contention for the Democrats. Instead, a separate vote on the issue was promised for November. What's the political picture after all of this? Well, almost all the Republicans voted yes, except for one, Rand Paul. And critically, members of the Democratic caucus, including an independent, voted to join the Republicans to give them the 60 votes to proceed. However, there was a move split the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer, the Democratic senator leader, opposed a measure for failing to address the health care subsidies. The next step, and the most important step, the bill must pass the final Senate vote and then go to the House of Representatives, and then finally be signed by the president. Until then, the government remains closed. So in short, the Senate cleared a major hurdle, but the fight isn't over yet, and the political fallout has just begun. Stay tuned to what happens in the House when it takes it up and how the healthcare fight shapes up in the final deal. I'll continue to bring you this information, share, comment, and let's continue.
This is our political expert. That's attorney Griggs. Kind of breaks down actually what happened just to give in detail. People say, hey, is it open? He kind of breaks it down. Anything you feel missing or just want to add to, just giving people this exactly what's going on so they're not confused about when things open, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's important that he walks through the steps. And I'll just say this, because he walked through the steps perfectly. The word cloture in the Senate is a powerful word, and I think people need to make sure they understand what that word means. So I'm just going to break that word down. Cloture is when there is a filibuster, and a filibuster is when the Senate has business that it can't conduct because there's a vote that it can't conduct, because one senator is basically saying, I'm willing to hold up the entire process, and under the rules of the Senate, that one person can hold up the entire process. To break that one senator's hold on the process, you need to have a vote where 60 or more senators agree to break that process. That vote is called cloture. That says to that one member, you can no longer filibuster. You can no longer hold up the business of the Senate. Now we can go back to the regular order of business for that specific issue. And so cloture is a very important vote because it allows the business at hand to continue. Without cloture, we would be back where we were during the shutdown, where both sides. And so they mustered 60 votes because they finagled the deal. And now they had the vote on cloture, which allows the measure to continue the process in the Senate, whereas before it was stuck. By the way, a filibuster used to be a senator talking 4 hours until they finally were exhausted, and then they could vote. But now the filibuster is a procedure. The senator just says, I am filibustering. There's a proper process to do that, and they don't have to talk the entire time. If you want to see the Senate do business, get rid of the in-name filibuster and go back to the speaking filibuster and watch what happens as the Senate has to deal with itself instead of this very nice.
Let's keep it. All right, let me throw it over to Leo. Anything about that explanation from Griggs that you want to add to as well?
Well, look, Attorney Griggs is a Yale man and doing political work and on the left in Georgia, and has had roles in the NAACP, et cetera. A couple of things I just want to be clear about. The Senate passed the bill on Monday, okay? The House has voted and passed, okay? So the government is open. I mean, this may be a timing issue, but Trump has signed the legislation. So if there's any question about that, the government is open. We're in business. Now, Trump has made it very clear that he is only about Trump, because he could care less about the two political party positions. Trump is just like, I think he was quoted in the AP News as he was making the signature email, like, this is no way to run a country, right? So he's dissing both sides. He doesn't. It's all about Trump. And so interesting place, longest shutdown ever. And yes, this is a horrible situation where people have suffered because of political gamesmanship between two political parties that neither one of them really care about the suffering of the citizen. And so here we are.
Yeah, I think that's a key point into breaking down what actually happened during this shutdown. Again, helping our watchers weed through the propaganda. So I saw this cut from Toure, pretty popular writer, highlighting his perspective on exactly what happened here. And so, Leo, we'll let you respond to this first.
Qasim Rashid is helping me understand the 8 senators who sold us out to Trump. Chuck Schumer's behind this. None of these 8 are up for re-election in 2026. Schumer asked them to vote yes. They agreed. He's such a coward that they folded and won't even own it. So yeah, these folks would not be able to vote yes unless Schumer told them that it was okay. But he chooses people for whom that please vote yes on this will not have as dire political consequences. Lawrence O'Donnell told me a politician would never take a vote that would end their political career. But Schumer knows these are his people who will not face political consequences. 2 of them are retiring, Dick Durbin and Jeanne Shaheen. Kaine and Rosen are not up for re-election until 2030. Angus King's not up till 2030, but he was the leader of this group, supposedly, of we got to end this shutdown now. He's not a Democrat, Angus King. This is 7 Democrats. Essentially 6, because John Fetterman is not really a Democrat. But we are right to focus our ire on Schumer because he said this is okay. He chose this path. They make it like it's because they don't want to see people get hurt, but that's not what's really going on.
Leo, agree, disagree? Any propaganda in that cut, as far as you can tell?
Well, there's tons of propaganda. I mean, just the general nature of why are you blaming this all on Schumer? I mean, yes, there's a good argument that the guy has not been a good leader. There's an even better argument that Hakeem Jeffries has been a horrible leader. The only difference between Hakeem and Schumer in the response to those 8 senators is Hakeem is a better actor. So his outrage and embarrassment doesn't match what he's done as far as leadership. He hasn't shown leadership on this issue at all, but yet he's all like outraged now. And so Schumer is just more of a transparent politician who appeals to his donors and the power class of the elites in the Democrat Party. He's just a little more transparent. Akeem is still trying to perform. Toure, he's a leftist who wants to see a street fight. So, that's just what we were just talking about. Toure is like kind of going, as I go to the hair salon and get my twisties done for $200 a twist, or whatever. I mean, he's a high class guy. He doesn't give a crap about the pain these people are feeling. You can hear that. He wants it to go on. Let's continue to put these people in pain, make them stand in food lines, Let's continue. They want to see a street fight, the far right and the far left.
Okay, Emil, I know you have been kind of stood on your toes and said, hey, this fight was not necessary right now. And so Toure's kind of painting it and say, hey, let's send our Schumer. You hear Leo say, hey, does it make sense? Your perspective from the left, if you will.
Sure. First of all, my ire is with Chuck Schumer because you could have done this 42 days ago. You didn't have to stand on 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks to get this deal done within the party. That's the part that I want people to understand.
And that's a different argument than Toure was making. And Emil, what you're saying, I'll let you continue, but I want to point out that what you're saying is talking about the strategic direction. That's a different argument than what Toure is making. But yeah,
I'm gonna address him though. But I want to be very clear about that because he's pointing at Schumer, and the problem is that those 8 senators initially in September 19th had already said they wanted this. That's the part that's missing from the conversation.
Okay.
Those 8 senators had already said, this is a bad idea. Let's not do this. And Chuck Schumer did not listen to him until 45 days later. That's the problem. And Toure didn't say that. If he had said that, I'd be rocking with him. And I'd say, okay, now I got something we can talk about. But he didn't say that. And that's a missing piece to this puzzle in terms of propaganda.
I'm not sure what Toure's been paying attention to, Montoya. I'm like, how did he miss that? Those 8 senators have been very clear. Fetterman has been very clear. They've all been clear.
Nah, good stuff, y'all. All right, this was a peculiar cut that I found, and I actually added it to the promotion talking about Charlamagne Tha God. I don't know if y'all saw him and Roland Martin have kind of went back and forth. And so this is not specifically about their back and forth, even though I want to give that context for somebody watching that may not have or may not keep up with the Breakfast Club. But this is specifically his thoughts on what the Democrats did. And I definitely want to get y'all take. Emil, we'll start with you after this cut.
You want to know why I think Democrats have already lost? I'll tell you my position. 1, because the Trump administration practices authoritarian strategy, and they don't give a damn about working class people, and they damn sure don't care about the poor. Number 2, Republicans are scared to death of that administration, and they have zero reason to make any concessions. They already have everything they want in the big deadly bill. Okay, massive tax cuts stay. ACA subsidy extensions didn't make it in. Deep cuts to Medicaid and social programs already in there. They have zero reason to play ball. Roland knows this, but he would rather sell y'all false hope instead of telling you the truth. Roland knows most of these Republicans have made careers running against Obamacare. They can't go back now, even if it kills them in the midterms. And a lot of people I've spoken to in government, Democrats, by the way, feel like that's why pinning a shutdown strategy around this issue was foolish to begin with. Okay, and a lot of them told me they knew they weren't going to get anything out of this except maybe the promise of a vote on the Senate floor that will ultimately fail. That's why I said last week Democrats lost. Okay, as you can see, that seems to be the case because they reached a tentative agreement yesterday that does not include an extension of the ACA subsidies. And you know who will be one of the first people out here fake dragging Democrats for YouTube views because of that? Roland Martin, even though he knew that was going to be the obvious political outcome from the beginning. Now listen, if Dems were able to get these authoritarian strategy-ass practicing Republicans to make some concessions on healthcare, I would be the first person on this radio saying I was wrong and applauding them. But I never saw it happening.
So, Emil, I'll go to you. If I could say this, when I come across that clip, I'm like, well, dang, Charlamagne Tha God, if he could kind of say, hey, here's what the ending was of this current shutdown that you clearly have continuously said on our show, it should have been before the big bill ever passed, not at this point, right? That's always been your stance. So when I watch how it plays out and Charlamagne Tha God, you know, in a sense, a radio personality says, hey, we knew it was going to end this way, then that's what made me say, did the Democrats play us? So you can kind of maybe answer what I'm saying, but definitely talk about what he talked about. But if he's able to see the whole play, that it was only going to come out to a potential vote that, as he says, is going to end in getting nothing, then this was just political play, and kind of speaks to what Leo said. They're playing with us. All of the politicians are, but this was just looking good. They got the votes they wanted in the election. And then, and let me say this one last thing. So it made no sense for them to continue to stand up. Not saying that they should have, because I agree with you. Let's help the people. So I'm not saying they should have, but it was weird for them to win all those seats and then make this concession now. And then when I see Charlamagne Tha God, I'm like, oh, this was a joke just for the seats. They still don't give a shit about us. That's how I see it. Emil, tell me am I getting the propaganda wrong or right, man?
No, you're getting the propaganda right, bro. And this is the part that I think Charlamagne didn't say. I'm gonna say out loud. The Republicans are master checker players, but they're terrible at chess. The Democrats are terrible at checkers and chess. So this is the problem with what's going on with the Democrats right now. And I get to be critical of them because I represent the left in this show. So this is my critique. You got to think 5 moves ahead, starting from the premise of 2009, when President Obama was facing a recalcitrant Republican Congress. 2011 or 2012, when the new Congress came in midterm, 2010, after 2010, in the 2011 Congress, he lost the midterms. The Democrats lost the midterms bad, and there was a Congress that was not going to do anything. You should learn from that history lesson from 15 years ago. When you have a recalcitrant Congress, what do? Your playbook should be 15 years of understanding how to navigate that situation. There's something called the parliamentarian in both houses of Congress. There's a person who understands the rule game that you're supposed to follow. In every Congress, there is a set of rules adopted by each house in order to do its business. You have to master that in order to master the game that the Republicans are playing. I call them master checkers player because they will shoot themselves in the foot to win a checkers game, and the Democrats will shoot themselves in the foot to lose a checkers game. And this is the problem you're seeing that Charlamagne's calling out, especially when he calls out Roland Martin. There was no reason. I promise you, the Republicans have demonstrated they will break their promises over and over again when it comes to promising something to the Democrats. So that they got a promise for a vote in the Senate means nothing to me, because they've done this before, and Lucy pulls the football every time from Charlie Brown.
Did you just call the Democrats Charlie Brown, Emil? Go ahead, Leo. That was funny.
No, it's fascinating to see the little fight between Charlamagne Tha God and Roland Martin, the culture having a fight. Roland does I know Roland. I've, spent some personal time with him, but interestingly, he's never, ever once invited me to be on his show, even though he's asked me to help him get people to be on his show. What that says about Roland is he's not really interested in honest intellectual debate about anything. He is a Democrat Party shill. And I will text him and let him know I just said that, because it's true. Roland does not engage any kind of fair and balanced partisan pro-black rhetoric. He's like, if I could use race on any type of subject to just fire up people and tell the Democrats that they need to kowtow to my needs, then that's why I use race in all my discussions. So he's leading in black media just because it was a small field. And Charlamagne Tha God comes along, and the guy actually does do rational sort of consideration that isn't partisan. I always say Charlamagne is left, but he's not partisan. He makes fair critiques, and Roland can't stand it. You're supposed to be loyal to the Democrats. It's so interesting to watch.
We got Kenny77 says DNC don't stick together. That was the bottom line. 6 people rejected the plan, and they needed to be punished, just like the RNC would do, is his perspective. And he actually says Charlamagne is wrong. Roland Martin is right. Go ahead, Leo. I think Charlamagne is right.
Let me give that listener a little background. Go ahead. Look. Here's even what Nancy Pelosi, extraordinary vote whipper. Those 8 people, as Emil and I both agree on and already said, those 8 people were already for stopping the shutdown. So let's not ignore the facts, people. Okay, that's one. 2, I will guarantee you that in this rendition of the vote, there were more than 8 Democrats ready to go ahead and say end the shutdown. A lot more. But smartly so, what you do in politics is you find the people who have the less risk to go ahead and openly vote. But your goal is only to get the number of votes that you need to do. So why put other colleagues in jeopardy when they don't have to? So you get the number of votes you need, and then the rest of the guys waiting on the wings, which probably were at least 12 other votes. Who knows? They just didn't have to do it. So let's not be naive.
Right.
More Democrats than those 8 wanted to end this shutdown.
No,
And the problem with the Democrats is that they're a much bigger, much harder tent to tame than the Republicans. Right now, the Republicans are lockstep, and there's a reason for that. There's not a lot of political diversity in the Republican Party right now. I'm sorry, there's just not.
True,
but
there
there's
isn't.
a
You're right.
ton of political diversity in the Democratic Party, and that's because they had to suck up all of the liberal Republicans, all of the blue dog conservative Democrats. They're all under one tent. So you're not going to get a hardcore disciplined group, and you're not going to get it from Chuck Schumer. I guarantee you that. Chuck Schumer is not
can Democrats
going to tame that kind of tent in this environment.
I'm sorry, Emil. I want to pick your brain on that. I mean, can Democrats live with the fact that they are a wide and diverse party? Can they live with that?
I think they can, but not under leadership from Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, by the way, because both of them are New Yorkers, and this is very important. What did Mom Donnie teach us about New York? That if you start at the grassroots, you can have a very healthy, diverse candidate that does some really unique things, or at least make some unique promises. But you can't do that with established corporate leadership representing the state. And that's the problem in the House and Senate. You've got those two who are relying on Wall Street dollars to make their moves, and they're not making moves based on the grassroots. So I don't expect the diverse political tent that the Democrats have created to do anything outside of the boundaries of what those two can muster. And I'm a fan of Hakeem Jeffries, but I don't like how he's leading right now.
So you would expect, therefore, I'm sorry, Montoya, but you would expect, therefore, for AOC representing this more diverse and Mondami style leadership, where they embrace the diversity, they call it an advantage of the progressive left, and so they make it systemic within their system. So you would say that AOC certainly probably should run against Schumer and replace him.
I would love if she did that. In fact, my hope is that someone like her can rise through the very difficult morass of New York state politics to get to that point where Schumer's shaking in his boots if he hasn't been defeated in a primary, because there's a problem in the Senate. And that is that A, we didn't have to do 7 weeks, 6.5 weeks of shutdown to begin with. And B, you didn't even message properly throughout the time to make sure people understood that when you finally do break rank, when you finally do achieve something, that there's a very specific goal. They hinged their goal on something that the big, beautiful bill had already killed. That was terrible. I want you to go back in time and do the same thing for the big, beautiful bill and gum up the entire government for as long as it takes not to let that thing pass.
And that was Charlamagne Tha God's point. I think that's the point he was making, right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, I almost played just to what you just talked about a bit. I almost played a Jon Stewart cut where he was clowning the Democrats on, we're going to stand on this, and they all went back on their thing for this. Now they're giving us the optics of we fought. You know what I mean? And so, but speaking to what y'all are just talking about, I found this cut from
you. Notice there's never a shutdown just before a midterm election. Never.
Okay.
If this had happened next year, I'm learning. Congress will look completely different. Both sides.
I respect it. This cut comes from, let me see if I can say her name, Breonna Joy Gray. She was former press secretary for Bernie Sanders. This is a cut with her and what's the brother name?
You talk about liberals and liberalism a lot. In fact, you've called it a moral void. And
Did I say that?
Yeah. And you said many times that Democrats are negligent and that they're just not standing for anything. I guess my question is, why do you see democratic politics or liberalism at large as a moral failure, as opposed to a series of bad choices or compromises. In other words, you're not just saying they're wrong. You're saying something far more serious about their kind of ethical and moral composition.
I guess I am. I guess I think that it is dishonest, something stronger than dishonest, immoral. Sorry. You have to ask yourself, are Democrats really so empty-headed? Are they just so goofy and silly and mistaken that they don't realize that 88% of Democrats support a policy like Medicare for all, and they just decline to run on it because oopsie daisy, they didn't realize? Did they not realize that Israel's actions, the genocide in Palestine, is wildly unpopular, that we're living for the first time in the United States of America in a country that is more sympathetic toward Palestinians than Israelis, despite the overwhelming pro-Israel slant of the mainstream news? But, oh no, we think it's a good idea for Kamala Harris to continue Joe Biden's Bear Hug Bibi policy? And they didn't realize that? Or were there interests that are more persuasive to the Democratic Party? Groups, if you will, which is a term that's often used to derisively describe like working class, people-centered groups.
Yeah.
Environmental groups, good groups. But all of these lobbying groups and these groups whose interests are antithetical to the interests of the people are what's really driving the Democratic choice. And so when you hear about compromise and you have to be a center party and you have to be pragmatic in order to win, that's all propaganda to justify why they won't just run on legitimately popular policies like universal health care, like taxing the rich, like a $15 minimum wage. Really basic stuff here.
Mont Hill, Leo, I'll let you respond. Any propaganda in there? Anything that you would like to?
No, but a fascinating commentary and discussion on morality and politics. What I think she is probably inappropriately using the word morality, I think, gentlemen, because morality is based on a set of values usually derived from religion. But what she is, I think, is questioning, which we just kind of alluded to, is the Democrats, because of their diverse population and because they are also political leadership tends to be electoral oriented, 50% plus one, and they're agnostic on values. They really are. Democrats are agnostic on values, just like, guess what? Republicans are agnostic on values. Their value is winning, right? Now, the problem with the Democrats is you lack integrity when you lie to people and say you can do all this crap for them. When you say, as Mondami is saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to give you this, free that, and free this, and then you never deliver, that's a lack of integrity. When you say that 83% of our voters believe in Medicaid for all, but you never really kind of deliver it, even from your own Democrat-controlled states, you don't act like you believe that. That's a lack of integrity. So the word that she's right about is they don't have integrity. The Democrats don't. I don't know if that's by design or by value system. They're just not virtuous.
Emil, your thoughts on Gray's thoughts on Mark Lamont's Hill show?
She gets no argument from me. In fact, coming from the left of the political spectrum in this context, I will tell her the same thing I told you guys in this show. If you want to play chess with the Democrats, you have to play chess from a position that's much more extreme than they're taking. You cannot be a party of the center in this checkers game that the Republicans are mastering right now. You have to be thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of this kind of Congress, but they won't think that way. And to Leo's point, its integrity, I would actually call it a lack of understanding what you're really there for in the first place. What we've said in this show many times over is that both parties are beholden to corporate interests. She said that as well. These are lobbying groups and other groups that do not have the will of the people at the center of their mission. The problem is the Democrats keep saying they are that party, but they keep showing they are not. And the problem is if we keep letting them dictate that they can say one thing and do another, then we get stuck with what looks like a more and more authoritarian Republican Party that's not willing to serve the people, even the people they say they represent, because there's no healthy opposition.
So, let's get a comment real quick before I go to the next cut. Kenny77 said, that is ironic. I would say the RNC has zero values. Release the Epstein files. We can have that discussion. What values and ethics are we talking about? Emil, I'll kind of bring this back to you because you mentioned that prior to the show. I've been on record. I think I've said this on the show. I know I've said it to you personally. I'm on record that I think the Epstein files are folly and not full of much that actually matters. And I think and I've been saying that prior to today. I think the last thing I've seen is still proving that based on what's come out publicly, that it's not what people think it is. I'll say that. And let me say that for people who haven't seen the previous shows, just to give a little context, that I'll throw it to you, Emil. The context that I've been using is once it moved from, if you recall, the Republicans were holding up, say we have the files here to kind of push people into saying, hey, don't vote for Biden because they've been supporting this. And then it flips to the other side. I realized, you know what? It can't be anything in those files because everybody kept saying if he's associated with the rich and wealthy, then it would be people on both sides that would be at issue. So both sides would have been mum's the word if it actually had something in it. This is just my outside looking in, not, political savvy like you two guys are, but just context and perspective is what I bring to the table. And I was like, the only reason they can play us like that and why Trump couldn't show us anything, why they decided not to show us anything, is because they've known the whole time it was nothing, and both sides have played us as the people, and we think there's actually something there that would make Trump look bad or make Biden look bad, and it doesn't affect either one of them. So that's the context for people who have not seen my previous show. Now, going back to you, Emil, in a sense, what's your response to Kenny? Because I agree with him in this sense. The values, Leo just said it, neither side is tied to the values. So I wouldn't get caught up in that part of the conversation, but also threw out a lot for why I don't think the Epstein files will be a lot. You told me you think there is something in them. So I'll go to you first.
Yeah, so there is something in the Epstein files, and you saw 3 emails come out when Representative Grijalva from Arizona, who was recently elected and had to wait until the House went back to its job because Mike Johnson kept him out of work for 6+ weeks since September 19th. She signed this petition that started the machine that's going to that hopefully will release these files. There's stuff in there, and the reason why I know there's stuff in there is because you have the FBI masking those files. You have the Attorney General go back on her word to talking about, there's files that we're going to release, and all of a sudden, no, there's nothing there. There's a reason why those things are happening, and it isn't because it's a game. There's some dirt in there that's going to hurt a lot of people beyond the president, but the president is first and foremost going to be hurt by it, which is why every time the Epstein files comes up, you see him in all caps say stuff. There is definitely something there. And the release of those 3 emails where Epstein is talking about Trump knowing stuff that he's not supposed to, he said he didn't know. Yeah, there's something in there. But the other part of this is that it has been a very healthy distraction for the Republicans because, by the way, before I go down that rabbit hole real quick, I won't.
I got our guest on too.
The MAGA base is up in arms over this. So it's not working to their benefit to do this. And I'm telling you that right now.
Let me joke over to Leo so we can get to our guest.
I'll let that go.
I'm going to do a trading places $1 bet. I'm not saying there's nothing in them, but it won't be anything that hurts Biden or
it won't hurt Biden,
like people assume. So I'm just saying that's what my $1 bet is. I'm not saying there's nothing at all, but it's nothing like either side, even the MAGA people or anybody that's ever said, this really, it won't be what we think it is. It'll be some procedural, couple people slay down, nothing major in my opinion. Leo, one thought, so I can get our guest on after this.
No, I think that there are things there that are going to create lots more distraction and discussion, just as you're saying, Montoya. But I would go a little further than you, Montoya. I would say there's nothing there that's going to impact elections because we are judge. I mean, a lot of the stuff about perversions of both sides were out before the 2020 election, and yet it didn't really make a difference. So, we knew things about Trump and his proclivities well before this, and the far right didn't care. Okay, so but will there be things that the communications director at the White House is going to jump on and say, "See, this is proof that Donald Trump was against these perversions. There's going to be things like that too. And she and the Republicans will just focus on those things that seem to exonerate him rather than the things that make him look like he's guilty.
So I agree with Leo. So you're gonna owe me $1 before we
I'll happily pay it if there is no political fallout to the Epstein files.
I ain't gonna say don't go. I'm gonna say 0, but not much. We got Manny saying this. The Tea Party says the Tea Party changed into what eventually brought MAGA, the Democrats, sit back while Bernie got cheated. They play with the public, pushing Biden 2024 as a legitimate candidate. I actually would agree with Manny on that. But let's go ahead and get our guest on real quick and play our next cut. Got my brother from Blackjack Podcast, DeJuan Hopewell. Thank you for being with us. We don't really bring guests on our political show, but we're playing one of your clips. So I'm highlighting and loving the fact that we're bringing you on, but we're going to play one of our regular clips and let you join us and just give your comments about it as well. But if you will, say hello to the people, introduce yourself. We'll play this clip and we'll continue our discussion, and then we'll get to your clip for our after innings, DeJuan. But thank you for being with us today.
No, I appreciate it, man. And I'll just say up top, I don't belong in this circle. Montoya, Emil, like these two brothers I actually know and have talked to. There's no way. Leo, I haven't had the pleasure, but just, the little bit I heard. So don't expect anything profound. You got it. I'm the host of the Blackjack Podcast. Essentially, it's a podcast that examines the civil rights movement critically. We look for missed opportunities. We look for flaws in strategy, not as a disrespect to the elders, but any football team plays hard on Sunday, but on Monday you watch the film if you want to get better. Any parent wants their child to do better. So we need to look at our past critically, and we've really not done that. Also, I have Race Critical. It is American history for the future. So a lot of parents are concerned about what's being taught in schools or what's not being taught in schools. And so you can go to racecritical.com. It is a U.S. history course that really looks at history from a critical perspective. And it's not just race, right? It's really about money, power, and race. All these three things can kind of help you predict human behavior. And so we want to look at that history critically. So that is who I am.
No, I love it. I think it's perfect timing for you to be on at this particular clip. Let me see. Whoever gave the last comment, we'll get to you after this clip.
Let's cut through the noise and tell the truth. Joe Biden was the most pro-black president since LBJ. And he did all of it in just one term. Here's the record. He had record low black unemployment. He achieved record low black child poverty, record high HBCU funding, record high black student loan forgiveness, record high SBA loans to black businesses. And he had 7 black cabinet members, the most in U.S. history. That cabinet included the first black and female vice president, first black secretary of defense, first black EPA administrator, first black head of OMB, a very important office, first black chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. He also appointed the most black federal judges, 63 in all, including the first black woman on the United States Supreme Court. Again, Biden did all of this in one term. But now Trump is back and he's trying to erase all of it. If you don't know the facts, you'll fall for the lies and disinformation of the pro-black imposters. Remember, all your skin folks aren't your kin folks. Stay woke.
Cut comes from Just Amazingly IG. As our special guest, DeJuan, we're actually going to just get your thoughts to that cut. One thing that I'll highlight, myself and Emil, when we started the Politically Conscious podcast, we were like, we're actually going right into the election. So we started right before the actual last general election, if you will. And so we kept saying, why the hell the Democrats don't actually give what they've actually done? Why don't they use that for their actual campaigning versus playing to race like they always do in a way like why roll out Cardi B when you got that track record? You know what I mean? Why not jump on your actual track record, since we are, in a sense, our community is really the decides whether they win or lose. Even at 13-14% of the population, we still are the second largest voting bloc, even though we're third in population. So just giving some of that context and seeing that cut, just your thoughts from the work you do, just any thoughts about that actual cut, if you will, Dewan.
I may not be invited back, but I just feel like since we, and I'm speaking of my folks, came to this country against our will, we have worked under, labored for, and for the benefit of white people. We live under white dominance. There is not a single industry that we control. There are no institutions that we control. I'm not very interested in generic universals. I mean, it's like marrying a woman who has a child, and you have a child with that woman, and you bring dinner home and say, I really care about my stepchild. No, you just brought dinner for everybody. They happen to benefit. So in that sense, I'm not overly blown away by generic policies that don't address the fact that I have no control in the society that I live under. My children's life outcomes are quite literally predicated upon how white people feel about them. When you don't control institutions, when you don't control industry, that is where you live. Now, to the point of black faces, again, also not a new theme in history. I mean, Roosevelt had his black cabinet, right? That whole thing. Plantations had black folks working on them that were not necessarily in the, picking cotton. So they were a diverse operation too. I don't really care. And so maybe that's not like a great answer.
It's a great answer. We just want a real, authentic answer. And I love your perspective because what you're bringing to the table, is the dialogue we're always having about politics. So I love what you're saying, not to cut you off, but I just want to make sure you don't play yourself down when what you're offering is extremely valuable to this discussion, especially for what we're doing. We're not just doing politics. We're trying to raise the consciousness and help people understand how actually being active in politics actually helps their bottom line and what they do. And so when this guy says, hey, here's the track record, I love your perspective. So it's no right or wrong on this, just so you know, but you're bringing a lot of value. I'll let you close your thought, and then I'll go to Brother Leo after you.
Oh, well, we got a train coming down the track, so I'm gonna get out the way.
Right,
I mean, essentially, I would just say until we start dealing seriously and critically with asset building policy for folks who actually need that, then what are we talking about? This country was built on asset building policy. It was the Homestead Act, right? It was the GI Bill. It was all these things that allow people to accumulate assets. That's not even on the table now, right? And so the choices are die slow or die fast. I mean, this is essentially what both parties are arguing. Even in this fight about healthcare subsidies, we're fighting about healthcare subsidies for a private system that leaves millions of people uncovered. Like, that's the fight. Okay. I mean, I guess, I mean, you know what I mean? So it's just like,
I respect it.
I don't really care that much.
Nah, fair enough. I think this is valid dialogue for our community. Specifically, I've been an independent for years, and I'm like, I don't know how any black person attaches to either party, part of for some of the reasons that you're saying. I may not be in full agreement with what you're saying, but I lean into what you're talking about, and I'm like, what am I actually getting? So even when I say this brother points out the track record, I'm just highlighting that even as a party, they're afraid to highlight even things that would actually seem as a benefit, because we watched during the political time, especially at the time of the general election, where in our community, people go, what are both parties giving us, and have no answer. And I'm like, you could at least say what that brother said. I'm just saying that from that standpoint. I'm not saying how much black people should value it, but I'd rather get that than you rolling out Cardi B. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, brother.
Better messaging Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, right? That's fair.
Right. And how many truly strong, critical thought leaders, black intellectuals, etc., people who could deliver substance along with a historical understanding, but a futuristic vision on what we need to be more than the ceremonial afterthoughts or representational politics, sir. I really appreciate, I'm very much interested in looking at your work and the racecritical.com. I wrote that down, and very, very pleasure to meet you, and you certainly belong here. I hope we can have you back, because the analysis that says that I want to love black people and black resilience enough to be critical of it, to say that we need more than just representation. I mean, look, the number of times, Emil, that gentleman said first black this, first black. Well, what does that mean? First black to get on first base, first black to throw a football. I mean, it's like, if we had $1 for every time a first black incident happened, we wouldn't need reparations. I mean, it's like, okay. I mean, I'm the first black person to pick up his coffee mug on the Montoya show. It's like, how is this standard that we have? It's so low. And so when people ask me, why aren't you a conservative Democrat, Leo? Because you're pro-black, you're pro-social justice, da 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 da. I said, because you know what? They're not committed enough to the crap. I don't want first black. What I want is real commitment to a democratic republic that represents and commits to restorative truths, things that are real and systemic, that allows us to have freedom and independence without having to position ourselves to a white way or even a political way, but a dignity way, a self-reliance way. Those things that he talked about Biden doing, they don't necessarily lead to systemic generational wealth. I mean, so just because some people were able to benefit from the IRA plan and the IIJA plan, and that we had a ton of money thrown into giving grants to communities, that doesn't create generational transfer of wealth. So just don't be happy with Trump's upcoming $2,000 check and think that means something. We're so cheap.
Emil, your thoughts?
Yeah, Dewan is spot on. Dewan and I have had some really good conversations, and he's been consistent, and I love that about him because he's really saying some truth. Here's the problem that we have in America as Black people in America. There are no policies that we can write today that specifically call out our plight. And until we have those, we got to deal with what Leo was talking about, the first this, the first that. I don't mind the first conversation. What I mind is, what did they do while they were the first? Because now, if you look at Biden's policies and the things that he did, he set aside money, he set aside contracts. You can go to his policies and look for actual ways to build generational wealth in his policies. They were there under the SBA, under the Minority Business Development Agency, under the White House initiative on minority-owned businesses. There were initiatives that would, if they were to propagate, create generational wealth. But you're not going to get those policies in America in 2025 because those policies are no longer popular in any context. So what we have to do is look at it incrementally. And what I want to see us do as a people and as a voting bloc is continue to push for incremental change, because the revolutionary change we actually need will never come.
Well, you say the policies aren't popular. I don't think they've been given a chance. I don't think that we've had public discussion and debate. Mark Lamont Hill, great academic, Michael Eric Dyson, all these folks, and bringing along economists, not black economists, but economists who look at how does America have a competitive advantage using all the talent and taking the least common denominator and raising it up to a new level. All those things will ensure that capitalism can survive for the ages to come. We're not even having that discussion. Social justice isn't just to make sure that black people have been treated properly based on the legacy of racial discrimination and slavery. Social justice actually makes a better market. The Democrats aren't making that argument, and that's what pisses me off.
So let me say this real quick, and we're going to go to another cut, and then we're going to get to Dewan's cut after this. So again, this is just me putting things in context and perspective. I love all the thoughts that have been said by all three of you. My context is, I'll say I lean a little towards Emil in this situation because here it is. I think what you're saying, Leo, is correct. I think what Dewan is saying is absolutely correct. I think both perspectives are correct. I think what Emil is saying, from my perspective, what I hear Emil saying is the reality of the politics, since I don't know if Dewan does, but I know the two of you and myself, we know that politics actually does, local politics is what the three of us focus on more so than who's the president, right? That's who we are. Mm-hmm. And so because of local politics and, YouTube more so than myself are strategically involved in making sure, because I always says, it's different things what people call politics, but I always first and foremost, politics equals personal interest. And so because I always say that, I don't get caught up in whether a black I've said this before, blacks are more Democrat than black. I've said that, right? I've said that type of thing or whatever. So I don't get caught up on whether you vote right or left. But at the same time, understanding I have real tangible things that we've been able to do locally or that I've seen affect me locally. So I say all that to say that regardless of, and I criticize the Democrats specifically for playing into the race culture stuff, while at the same time, if I see, which I think is Emil's point, if there is an incremental opportunity, such as more available money for my district to actually take advantage of and set up a business, if that's being given to me, while I don't like how they play politics, I'm still going to pick that policy over the another group not trying to give me, that's trying to do the opposite of that. So I'm just saying it still ends up being the reality of what do I get, because I don't care whether the party likes me, even though that's the way they play the game. I don't care who likes me. But at the same time, I give credit when a local policy, regardless of whether it's a Democratic Party or Republican policy, I meant to say, I'm going to select the one that helps my personal interest based on what it helps me locally. So I'm just kind of highlighting it to say that the reality is, to Emil's point, while we would like the bigger things, it does take incremental steps. And I believe our ancestors took incremental steps to get us to where we can be on this podcast arguing over whether we're right or wrong. Whereas had they not taken their incremental steps, this could look very different even today. We've lived in the glory of what our ancestors did 60, 70 years ago, to the point where we don't think it could even be taken away. And I'm not saying that it can be. I'm just highlighting, I don't think I agree. Incrementally is how we've had to tread, because both parties, I don't care whether they're for me as a Black person, but I do want to pull out of either party anytime a candidate comes along, something that can benefit me as a Black person. I'm willing to look at that, and I don't care what party's giving it to me. So that's a long soapbox thing. Go ahead, Leo.
So the gentleman is newest to me, so I want to take this opportunity to, I just looked at his website, racecritical.com, and I saw that is very educational focus. And Emil, the reason why that's significant to me is because when we think about things that our forefathers and foremothers did to create reconstruction of Black opportunity, or Black, even just the beginning with dignity in America after post-slavery, is that they focused on things that were developing internal wealth, right? Education, the ability to build your own community, things like that. I almost curse, but the stuff that gentleman in that clip started talking about, he didn't even talk about what gains or what empowerment Biden's administration gave us in the ability to educate ourselves. He talked about, giving a lot of money to HBCUs. Well, that doesn't necessarily translate, as we well know by listening to all the shenanigans going on at a lot of these universities. That doesn't translate into necessarily developing the critical thinking skills to understand your circumstance in life, to be able to rise above your lot through your own analysis, your critical reasoning about where you are in life and what skills that you need to do to go and be competitive, right, in this world. Our forefathers did stuff like that. They focused on the family and personal economy and things like that. They focused on future and delayed gratification. Those are not the things that we're thinking about now. Now, if I had Black civil rights leaders really telling Black educators to go start race critical websites like this that focus on education initiatives, and then finding resources to create independence from the regular education system so that you can do it in a way that really build empowerment, so that when white people start saying we don't want to learn history, you don't make a big deal about it. You say, go ahead on and be ignorant. You let them become ignorant, so that actually, in a competitive sense, from an economic base, you're going to be more powerful because they're going to be stupid. Come on. Why would you care about their education so much? Go and be able to. That's what our people did in the past. Is that what we're doing now? I don't know.
Would love for you to come in on that, DeJuan, before I go to the next cut. Give me a thought, brother.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, and this is the beauty of conversation, because when we put labels and say, oh, I'm conservative or whatever, but let's actually, what do you actually mean, right? And you find out we mean a lot of the same things. And I agree with what you're saying, Antoine. I believe in what you're saying, Emil. Incremental progress, sure. The problem is we haven't established what the goals are, right? And two people can't walk together unless they agree on what direction they're going, right? That's what they taught me back in church. And so if the goal isn't to challenge white dominance, if the goal isn't to have control over our lives and in our families and our communities, you'll take a little morsel or a crumb and think that you've gained something. But yes, incremental steps towards what? And I don't think we've actually agreed that that should be the goal. And that's why every Black institution and organization right now is radically ineffective, because we have no agreement on what that goal is.
Great thoughts.
Juwan, you're right. And one of my challenges to those institutions is we got over the big hurdles in the 50s and 60s. We got over the giant ones that can't vote. You can't walk in down the street. There's a bunch of giant hurdles that we overcame. To Montoya's point about where we are today. The problem is now that those finer hurdles, those things that we could be addressing with those organizations, we're completely distracted. And I have my theories as to why our distractions are so vast. But the problem is, to your point, Duan, there is no agreement because we don't even agree on what hurdles there are in front of us that we should be attacking to decide what direction we want to go in. Because if you don't know which direction you're going, you don't know which hurdles you want to attack.
Nah, good stuff. We got Manny says Leo is cooking today. So all right, let me go to this cut. One more cut.
You provided great company.
Yep. At the top of the hour, we'll go to our extra innings with Dewan's cut from his Blackjack podcast. But let's get this cut out the way because this is very pertinent to this moment as well.
Let me confide something in you, okay? When you came out and you announced Prop 50, to say nothing of the merits of it, I'm generally I like independent commissions, okay? Yeah. But beyond my own personal views, when you came out with this, I thought, that's a big swing. I don't know what's going to happen politically. Just as a political move, the polls were against you. Yep. Schwarzenegger was against you. Yeah. Good governor groups were against you.
Yeah, that's right.
And ultimately, I didn't know it was going to be.
I mean, the first poll was 38%, just to underscore that. And again, because I, like many, agree with you, support independent redistricting. But you can't do it state by state with one arm tied behind your back. You can't unilaterally disarm as other people are not playing by the rules. Donald Trump and Republican governors across the country, governors not just in Texas, but you're seeing what happened in Missouri. You see what happened in North Carolina. Obviously, what's going to happen in Indiana, likely, and then Florida. They're not screwing around. They're consolidating power. And we were sitting there, and I think Donald Trump did not expect what Californians did. He thought we would try to win an argument by writing an op-ed, maybe express disdain and concern about the country. I don't expect
the Democratic Party of
old, and I think that's the bottom line. And I think this moment, what happened on Tuesday, represents a new moment: clarity, conviction, purpose, energy, on our toes, not on our heels. A resurgent Democratic Party.
So, Emil, we'll start with you. If I said to that in response, again, that's why I'm the moderator and y'all are the experts, if you will. But if I said, okay, out of all the time that we've, in our 51 shows and we've talked about both parties need to be formidable in order to have a proper republic, both sides need to be, if we're going to be limited to this two-party deal. Leo's even highlighted earlier in the year that if there's ever a time for a third party to emerge, not necessarily immediately, but this is the time to lay that groundwork to where maybe a third party could be more effective, which would be effective in the long run for our republic. But if that does not happen, if I said Newsom's Prop 50 seems to be the first real backbone attempt of the Democrats, I'm not saying I'm right. Would you say I'm right or wrong, Emil?
Gavin Newsom is thinking about 2028 or 2032. Let's be very clear. And I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing. And he played it right with Prop 50. What he said was pure propaganda, though. The vote, this election last week, that was not about a resurgent Democratic Party. It was about a repulsive Republican Party, period. It was like, I got to pick limp broccoli or limp kale. And it was limp broccoli. Everybody picked the broccoli because it's more familiar than kale. That was it. That was the only reason they picked it. It wasn't because the Democrats have aggressively positioned themselves as an alternative. It was that the Republicans became repugnant in a lot of their ways. And people were like, I don't want that. So then the Democrats win on that. And what Prop 50 was a response to Texas. Right? What are the Democrats supposed to be doing? Leading. That is, they're supposed to be putting policies in front of the people that actually do something that's not in response to something else the other guy did. That is not what you saw, and that's why the Democrats are not resurgent.
Got it. Leo, your thoughts, and then we're going to go to the ones cut to do our extra innings.
No, I agree. I'm looking, if Democrats, and again, if this race representational politics was winning, then you wouldn't even listen to Gavin Newsom because he's a white man. It's like he can't represent anything that's really going to help us. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I agree with Emil that that's a real thing. I'm interested in let's move on. I'm just so deep in thought about the future. I don't see that the Democrats have taken advantage of creating a movement. They've had a moment, right? In Georgia, I've been spending some time now talking to a lot of people about how we won the PSC race here on the issue of affordability. And some of the journalists who contact me were like, well, Leo, what do you think about you joining the Democrats and helping to replace those 2 public service commissioners? I said, I didn't join any Democrats. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, the Democratic Party replaced. I said, no, that wasn't a Democratic Party win. That was a people win. The Democratic Party actually had nothing to do with that movement. That was people from things like the Working Family Parties, Black Voters Matter, Georgia Conservation Voters, Environment Georgia. They got in touch with a conservative Republican and said, help us get climate policy done in Georgia. I said, first, you got to make sure the PSC fears you. So let's replace some PSC people. The Democratic Party would never hire me.
Okay.
These activists did. But the Democrat political consultants don't ever want to give power to the people like that. They're not going to acknowledge that the people did that, because then why are you paying them money for Lamborghinis and Bugattis?
Oh, good stuff. All right, let's go into our extra innings. If you are watching this, our extra innings, again, we talk politics for the first hour, but we'll bring something that relates to politics per se, but it's not necessarily what's going on currently. This actual cut, again, I had planned to play this before me and Dewan hooked up. Again, I've been knowing this brother for a number of years. So I had planned to play his cut without his permission because I don't reach out to him, but I know he would have been good with it. And I ended up commenting on his actual page. So I hope y'all will follow him, and we'll give y'all information on how to follow Dewan after this cut. But we hooked up, and I was like, man, come on the cut. I'm playing on the come on the show. I'm playing one of your cuts for our show today. So I think this is a very interesting and worthy discussion that takes us off now back to the past. As the one highlighted, he specializes in bringing that type of material to us, and this is from his Black Jacked podcast.
I need black conservatives to stop saying Martin Luther King was a Republican. I get it. You're a black Republican. You don't want to feel alone, but that doesn't mean we can just make up stuff. Dr. King's father absolutely was a registered Republican for most of his life, but even that shifts in 1960 because you have Richard Nixon going up against Jack Kennedy. Dr. King's in jail, so Daddy King's like, can somebody help my kid, please? Right? So Nixon doesn't really move. Kennedy does. So Daddy King was like, yo, I'm going to go with this Catholic boy. Dr. King himself was famously nonpartisan. He did not endorse candidates. He didn't really get into that. He felt like, let's challenge both parties. And I think there's a lesson in that we can learn from today. However, even that shifts in 1964 because Barry Goldwater, who's like Trump 1.0, wants to roll back civil rights and the whole thing, he runs for president. And King was like, no, this is too much. I got to speak up on this one. So he does that. Having said that, I think trying to put King into any party is problematic today. Things change, right? So Deion Sanders, when he was in college, he played for Florida State. Florida State used to be a women's college, but things change, and so it is with politics. The Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party that black people in the 40s and 50s belonged to. It just isn't. It'd be very problematic to put Dr. King in today's Republican Party. This is the same man who writes his then girlfriend Coretta in 1952 and says, you know, I'm actually more of a socialist than capitalist. You can't put that man in today's Republican Party, right? Things change, things evolve, things shift. So I think it's kind of like problematic to try to do that whole thing, to try to own his legacy into one party or the other. Having said that, we can learn something from the whole, I'm not rocking with either party, but I'm going to challenge both. I think Killer Mike said it best. When you see black people arguing about Democrat, Republican, you really do sound like two slaves arguing about who has the best master.
From the Black Jack podcast, my brother Dewan Hopewell. This is obviously great piece. I want to say this as a semi-historian, a lot of people know me this as well. And I remember one time, Leo, I got invited to a Dr. King celebration with conservatives, and their mouths were wide open when I brought the fact that what he wrote, what he put in that cut about King actually feeling like he was moving towards more socialist than what we practice in this country. So they were shocked. And again, I wasn't even doing it to be intentional. I just can't go in and not tell the truth. And so I got invited, and it was just kind of like, I get the things that y'all latch onto for the party, but here's the reality of who King was. And I was just simply saying at that event, that as people, as voters, we should represent more like this. And so, Dewan, you had asked me, why did I choose that cut? That's part of the reason, because I watched both parties, in my opinion, misuse the actual history of King, and not to turn this into a history about King show per se, but that was the why, just to answer your question to me. But your thoughts about your own cut as it relates to anything you've heard today or anything you want to say about it. But thank you for coming on the show today, brother.
I would just say one of my great disappointments is the internet was supposed to democratize information, right? And I think that has happened, but unfortunately, it has also democratized misinformation. And we're living in a world where we have all this information, we have all this access, and yet the film Idiocracy seems so on point that we're getting dumber. And misinformation is rampant, and everything just becomes gospel because you say it on TikTok, right? And so I just think it's so unfortunate. But even as adults, I think sometimes we have to literally go back to the basics, right? We think about children needing to learn, but how much misinformation have we learned, and how much have we consumed until it feels innate? And so the challenge now with the internet is that because people have TikTok and YouTube, everyone's an expert, and you can't tell them how dumb they are. Like, they will not listen to you when you say, no, that's just actually demonstrably, objectively false. And so I've talked to a lot of no, Dr. King was, they are adamant. The historical record doesn't actually say that. But I think that last point is salient because, again, whenever you say something about one party, automatically people default to the other. And so I've been very disappointed in this age that we live in, where I think there's been a healthy rebuke to the Democratic Party that Black people are making to say, hey, you don't own us. But the default isn't, let's all be rah-rah MAGA. Like, I just, like, that becomes the default thing, which has nothing to do with your situation. So, yeah, I'm going to get off these tracks, man, and let these other gentlemen have at it.
Nah, man. Thank you for everybody watching. I just put it down here. This is how you subscribe to his page. So if you're watching right now, I always say this when people come to my live experience: don't be too cool for school, and because you're enjoying what you're hearing, to not support. And support today is just simply going to go subscribe to his page. So if you're on YouTube watching, I expect those numbers to go up. If you're on Facebook, you got to go find it. It is what it is, but it ain't that hard. I'm going to leave this up, but it's youtube.com/@blackjacked with a D pod. So I do want y'all to go follow this brother if you're liking what he's talking about. But let me get both of y'all thoughts on our extra innings. Leo, I'll go to you. Just any thoughts about that particular cut? Obviously, I love what my brother Dewan is doing, especially as someone who loves history, and I know you do as well. So I'm definitely going to follow him more. But any thoughts about, just King, and as I said, how he's misused so often by both parties, in my opinion, based on who he actually is, and we could actually learn more from the actual record that Dewan is bringing to the table about King. But go ahead, Leo.
Brother Dewan said something that reminds me of a Les Brown quote. It's not true because he said it, but he said it because it's true. And that is absolutely, I love that he's representing truth there. When I was doing Black engagement, Hispanic engagement, and Asian engagement for the Republican Party from 2013 to 2016, basically, yes, there were many times when I had a discussion with these people about, especially Black conservatives, the old guard Black conservatives that held on to that kind of mentality, Dewan, I kind of tossed them aside. I wouldn't use them. As a matter of fact, they got so angry at me now that they reformed the Black Republican Council in Georgia, and they're sort of calling me a libertarian because I won't buy into all this propaganda type talk. I won people over to the Republican Party, not by saying this face card or that face card was a Black Republican. I mean, because even the Frederick Douglass Republicanism was not represented in the current Republican Party, and wasn't even in 2014 before Trump. So one is that you can win Black people based on actually what are you doing for me? I got a suitcase full of votes. It's owned by nobody. Okay, on school choice we did that, on prison reform we did that, on civil asset forfeiture we did that. Black people deserve truth. If we can get Black people to start being hyper partisan and be more pro-truth, then we're going to win. And I love that your website and your presentation, sir, represents this idea of presenting first truth, true, good, and beautiful. And thank you for being here today.
No, absolutely. And I got to say this, Amir, before you go, because my brother Leo revoked one of my other favorites, Frederick Douglass. And so if I could highlight and just kind of dismember, like, again, how people like to attach misinformation to the actual history. And so people love to go to the Frederick Douglass quote where he says, when Lincoln says, hey, what should I do for your people in the event that we win this war and they are released or whatever? And Douglass says nothing. And so people use that now, misuse it now, because Douglass's point was absolutely salient. I absolutely agree with it at that time. And what he meant was leave us alone. So for about 12 years, with the help of the military in the South, where they would leave us alone, we get the Rosewoods, we get the Greenwoods, we get the Winston-Salems when we were left alone. Then the compromise happens 12 years after the Reconstruction. The military moves out, and the Ku Klux Klan says, hey, this voting thing is not going in our favor. We need to scare these Negroes out of voting. So most people don't know that all the lynching was related to the fact that in a 12-year period, our people became literate. One of the biggest phenomenons in human history. I'm talking about throughout the world historically, how quickly our people went from illiterate to literate is actually something that could and should be studied. But in addition, those already majority Black areas sent people to the highest land, six people to the highest land. So I'm giving this history lesson for a reason. And that's what happened when we were left alone. So in that sense, and when I say left alone, let me get this clear, because we are the politically conscious show. I don't want this loss on this, and I'll go to you, Emil. When I say left alone, not left alone and not participated, they actually use this very same system to build up their communities. That's the thing that we miss today. We say, hey, look at those communities. And we go, all right, we need an economic focus, not realizing they were selecting their own mayors. They were sending people to Congress so that their tax dollars could be represented, because as they moved into the actual economy, coming from the free economy where they didn't have any money to pay tax dollars, but as they say, hey, as they bought land, they got up to 15 million acres. I'm just giving a history lesson here, so forgive me, I'm on my soapbox right now. But as they got up to 15 million acres, they wanted their tax dollars to be represented too. So they sent people in. So they use the very same system that we say, oh, should we even vote? Both parties ain't shit. Should we vote? Like, we're doing that, not realizing how they actually built up those Black enclaves. Is using this same system and being involved. The Ku Klux Klan says, look what them Negroes are doing with our system. Let's make sure they don't vote. That's what happened. Go ahead, Emil.
Look, Montoya, thank you for that history lesson, because it's poignant. And to Dewan's point about MLK being, famously nonpartisan, he also said this, and we always hear how Martin Luther King was, his, I have a dream speech. And on an interview in May 8th of 1967, he said this: I must confess that the dream I had that day has in many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years. And I would say over the last few months, I've gone through a lot of soul searching and agonizing moments. And I've come to see that we have many more difficulties ahead. And some of the old optimism was a little superficial. And now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is we still have a long, long way to go. When Dr. King was speaking like that, he was not popular. He was not lionized. He was not mythologized. He was not put into the heroes pantheon, because he was speaking a truth that we don't like to talk about even today in our community. And Dewan called it out. I'm here to talk about those truths as much as we are going to talk about who we should be voting for, because those truths, that long, long way to go, that conversation we forgot. And to Dewan's point earlier in this show, perhaps we don't know what our goal is in the first place.
Nah, go ahead, Dewan. Yeah, matter of fact, as the guest, we're going to let you close us out, man. Again, I put the podcast up. I hope people will follow. I'm definitely going to subscribe because I was on your IG page, but I'm going to go subscribe as soon as this is over. But we welcome you back. And anytime you come into Atlanta, we're trying to get a Leo, trying to get a meal down here. We'll welcome you to be a part of that as well, and just let you know, just in case your schedule allows for you to come in town, because the work you're doing, I think Leo has already highlighted that is to a degree the most important work if we're going to actually take steps towards that long way to go that Emil talked about. And we have become distracted and not doing enough of the work. It pains Leo all the time. He calls me sometimes just in pain about, are we losing ground on, because what I always say is we revert back to the old tactics, not realizing what our ancestors actually got us, and we don't actually build on new tactics for the current times. I think the work you're doing, is a reset. Let's understand that history. Let's review what did work and did not work. That gives us an opportunity to actually build on. But because we often have leaders who kind of resort back to protest this or do that, again, protest can be necessary, but we just do it in a way that doesn't serve the steps that they've already gotten us. I'll leave it with you, man. Thank you for coming on the show. Definitely tell people how to follow you again as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I'll just say in closing, we seem to have a hard sort of factory setting where we just look to Dr. King for everything, right? So Dr. King is sort of this canonical figure. And I have an episode of my podcast called Martin Luther is Not Your King. And I'm challenging that, right? This is someone we should respect greatly and immensely, but why is he the Bible? And is there a larger agenda behind that? I think we should critique that to the point we were talking about, what is our ultimate goal? I would just say that and leave it there. But yeah, you can find the Blackjack Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever there's podcasts. My YouTube channel obviously has a bunch of stuff on there, and social media, Blackjack Pod. So I just appreciate the invite, man.
Nah, good stuff. And what you just said, I'm currently reading. I just got to shout out. I'm a big Eddie Glaude fan. His latest books, We Are the Leaders We've Been Looking For, which kind of is poignant to probably why you're in a sense critiquing King in the way that you may be on your thing. I think it's just a perfect segue to end the show. Amazing show today, fellas. If you can make time to run, we'll have you on more often than not. I'll say that. And we don't typically bring a guest on because these two brothers are so brilliant. I usually don't have time to let somebody else.
Yeah, I can't really, swim in that
it's all good. I'm just saying if it ever makes sense, we'll get you back here. All right, good stuff, y'all. If y'all will, I'll stay on real quick while we go out. I got a little quick commercial for the Mental Dialogue Live experience for anybody watching if you're in Atlanta. So pay attention to this. Hope to see y'all next Friday. If any of you are in Atlanta, I'm going to close out with this commercial. So if y'all just stay on with me very briefly and keep y'all in the back, and I'll let y'all go. I know you already stayed on longer than normal. The next Mental Dialogue Live experience is one for the culture, y'all. Join us for the Black Love Dialogue, an exclusive event for African Americans serious about building lasting marriages and restoring the power of Black love. Featuring Derek, Cecilia Clark, Ashonda Davis, and Chris James, tackling love, emotional intelligence, and finance in modern relationships. Plus, connect during our business break. Friday, 7 p.m., November the 21st at Urban Grind. All details at mentaldialogue.com.